Hello, young explorers! Welcome to Lavis Creations, your favorite YouTube channel for fun and learning. Today, we're going to embark on a journey back in time. We're going to dive into the world of World War I. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't war serious and scary? Well, yes, it can be, but here at Lavis Creations, we're going to sprinkle a bit of humor on it to make it more enjoyable. Imagine countries behaving like kids in a playground squabble, only on a much bigger scale. We're going to introduce you to some quirky characters, funny mishaps, and strange coincidences that played a part in this gigantic event in human history. So, fasten your seatbelts, grab your popcorn, and get ready for a roller coaster ride of laughter and learning. So, are you ready to jump into our time machine and explore World War I in a fun and exciting way? Now, imagine all the countries as kids in a schoolyard. Everyone wants to be the coolest and the strongest, right? That's kind of like how things were before World War I started. So there was this big, cool kid named Germany. Germany had a lot of really awesome toys, like cars and factories, which made the other kids, or countries, pretty jealous. On top of that, Germany was getting bigger and stronger by the day, and that scared some of the other kids. Then there was this smaller, kind of quiet kid named Serbia. Serbia was friends with a really big kid named Russia. Now, Serbia didn't have a lot of toys, but Russia had plenty and was always ready to share. One day, Austria-Hungary, another big kid on the block, decided they wanted Serbia's lunchbox, which was really just a metaphor for territory. Serbia didn't want to give up their lunchbox, so they asked Russia for help. Russia, being the good friend they were, said they'd back Serbia up. Meanwhile, Germany, being friends with Austria-Hungary, said they'd help them get the lunchbox. This made other kids in the schoolyard, like Britain and France, nervous. They didn't want Germany and Austria-Hungary to get too strong, so they decided to join Russia and Serbia's side. Now, all this may sound like a bunch of kids arguing over toys and lunchboxes, but in reality, it was much more serious. These toys and lunchboxes represented power, resources, and land, things that countries need to grow and prosper. The tension kept growing until one day, the unthinkable happened. Austria-Hungary's favorite toy, Archduke Ferdinand, was broken by a kid from Serbia. This was the last straw for Austria-Hungary, and with Germany's backing, they declared a schoolyard fight, or in grown-up terms, a war against Serbia and Russia. So you see, all this fuss was basically about who has the biggest and coolest toys. Remember those times when you and your friends team up against another group in a game? Countries did the same during World War I. So, let's imagine the world as a giant playground, and the countries as kids who want to play a big, serious game. Now in this game, some kids, or countries, were best buddies. They had each other's backs, just like you and your best friend. These groups of best buddies are what we call alliances. Over in one corner of the playground, we had the Triple Entente. This was a fancy term for the Best Buddies Club of Britain, France, and Russia. They were like the Three Musketeers, always ready to stand up for each other. Then, over on the other side of the playground, we had another group called the Central Powers. This was the cool club of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. They were like the Three Stooges, always getting into mischief together. Now, just like in any game, these alliances were formed for a reason. The countries in each alliance promised to help each other out if any of them got into a fight. It's kind of like saying, if you mess with my friend, you mess with me. So just like when you're picking teams for a game of tag, or cops and robbers, these countries were picking their teams for the big game. And just like in those games, everyone wanted to be on the winning team. But unlike the games you play, this game had some seriously high stakes. You see, this wasn't just any game. This was going to be the biggest, most intense game the world had ever seen. It was like the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and the Olympics all rolled into one. And all the countries were getting ready, picking their teams, and gearing up for the big showdown. And so, the teams were ready, and the big game was about to start. With teams formed and everyone ready for the big game, the whistle blew and World War I started. Picture this, It's like the biggest, most epic game of hide and seek you could ever imagine. But instead of your backyard, it's the whole world. And instead of your friends from school, it's countries from all around the globe. Now, you might be thinking, a war doesn't sound very fun, and you're absolutely right. But for the sake of our tale, let's imagine it a bit like a giant game of tag, where everyone's trying to outsmart and outrun each other. The first to be it was a country called Austria-Hungary, who tagged Serbia because they were pretty sure Serbia had hidden something important from them. Russia didn't think that was fair, so they joined the game to help Serbia. Germany, who was best buddies with Austria-Hungary, didn't like that and decided to tag Russia. Before you knew it, more and more countries were joining in. Now, this wasn't your typical game of tag. It wasn't just about tagging and running. There were strategies, alliances, and even secret plans. Countries had to think on their feet, make quick decisions, and trust their allies. It was a game of wit, courage, and sometimes a bit of luck. And just like in any game, there were timeouts. Moments when the players would stop, catch their breath, and rethink their strategies. But instead of a quick pause for a drink of water, these were called ceasefires. So there you have it, the start of World War I, told as the biggest game of hide and seek, or tag, ever played. A game that spanned continents, involved millions of people, and changed the world forever. Did you know they even had a halftime? But instead of orange slices, it was called a ceasefire. Just like every game, this one had to end too, and boy, did it leave a mess. Imagine the biggest, wildest party you've ever seen, with streamers flying, cake splattered everywhere, and a mountain of dishes piled up. Now, multiply that by about 1 million, and you've got the aftermath of World War I. The party finally wound down on the 11th day of the 11th month, at the 11th hour, when the armistice was signed. That's a fancy word for a pause button on the fighting. Everyone was exhausted, and the place was a wreck. Countries were like tired kids, sprawled out on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of their wild shenanigans. And just like at the end of a real party, somebody had to start cleaning up. But instead of just tidying up toys and washing dishes, countries had to rebuild entire cities, mend relationships, and figure out how to move forward after such a colossal cake fight. This is where the Treaty of Versailles comes in. Think of it as a big chore list that Germany, who was seen as the party's main troublemaker, had to complete. It said things like, Germany must accept blame for starting the war, and Germany must pay for the damages. It was like making the kid who started the food fight clean up the whole kitchen. But just like that kid might feel a bit miffed about having to do all the work, Germany wasn't too happy about it either. They thought the chore list was way too long and way too tough. And this grumbling set the stage for another big party. But that's a story for another time. In the end, the world learned a lot from this big, messy party. They learned that throwing cake at each other might seem fun at first, but it leaves a lot of cleaning up to do. And most importantly, they learned that it's much better to talk things out before things get too out of hand. And that's how the big messy party called World War I ended. Well, wasn't that a fun ride through history, folks? We laughed our way through the causes of World War I, giggled at the silly alliances, chuckled as the Great War began, and finally roared with laughter at the end of the war and its aftermath. Who knew history could be so hilarious, right? Now, I want you to think about all the funny bits we've covered. Which part tickled your funny bone the most? Was it the ridiculous causes that started the war, or the odd alliances that were formed? Maybe it was the start of the war itself, or the somewhat amusing aftermath. Whatever it was, we'd love to hear about it. And while you're thinking about that, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Lavis Creations for more fun history lessons. Thank you for joining us on this adventure, and we'll see you next time.